Zlatan, Neymar, Mbappe, even Messi, they were all brought in to make history, to deliver the trophy that would finally place Paris among the giants of Europe. But in the end, it wasn't them. It was Vitinha, Barcola, Dembele, Doué. Who would have thought these would be the names written into PSG's greatest night? But behind that triumph, beyond the final whistle and the headlines, there was a blueprint and someone who brought it to life, a mastermind, a conductor, an architect, not Nasser Al-Khelaifi, not the transfer budget, but someone with a vision and the authority to make it work. It was a coach with a vision, with character, a coach who took a team broken by failure and shaped it into something complete, a coach who once turned a 4-0 humiliation into one of the greatest comebacks in football history. And above all, a coach who doesn't care who you are. If you don't press, if you don't follow instructions, you don't play. Because in his team, hierarchy doesn't come from fame, it comes from commitment. He is the structure, the standard, the boss, and he is Luis Enrique. When Enrique arrived at Paris Saint-Germain, he didn't inherit just a squad, but an inherited history, a history marred by disappointment and defined by how the club handled pressure. PSG had become synonymous not just with losing, but with spectacularly unraveling. The memories were painful and vivid. Barcelona, Manchester United, Real Madrid, you name it. Each defeat more haunting than the last, reinforcing an image of fragility at the highest level. At its core, the issue was never about a lack of talent or ambition. PSG's squad, filled with superstars such as Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi, had long surpassed the usual standards of quality. The true issue lay deeper, in a culture of individualism, instability, and psychological vulnerability that reappeared each time the stakes rose. The team had talent, but lacked cohesion, had ambition, but lacked resilience. Luis Enrique knew this. He saw the problem not just as tactical, but existential. His first mission in Paris was not merely to rearrange tactics or adjust formations. Instead, he sought something deeper and more lasting, to change the collective mindset. Quietly, without fanfare, he began dismantling a culture that elevated individuals above the team. From the very start, Luis Enrique made his standards known. One of his first demands was a €15,000 machine to monitor every physiological detail of his players. Each member of the squad passed through it once or twice a week, not by request, but by routine. In training, the foundations were laid meticulously. Players learned to press methodically, rather than emotionally. Possession was not rushed. It was composed, measured, deliberate. The ball moved intentionally, from one carefully selected zone to another, always within a clearly understood framework. Gradually, PSG transitioned from a collection of stars to an integrated unit, each player defined not by individual talent, but by their role within a cohesive structure. The results soon validated Enrique's methods. Paris Saint-Germain became the team with the most successful dribbles in a single Champions League season since Enrique's own Barcelona nearly a decade earlier. Yet the dribbles were no longer isolated acts of desperation. They were part of a coherent system. Players didn't perform for themselves, but for the collective. Individual players blossomed precisely because the structure freed them from the pressure of individual heroics. Ousmane Dembele, often criticized for inconsistency, thrived under the demands of Enrique's disciplined system. Vitinha became a cornerstone of midfield control, his vision now complemented by positional clarity. Bradley Barcola transformed from raw potential into a consistent attacking force, disciplined in his movement, yet still expressive in his play. Newcomers too immediately understood the requirements. Désiré Doué seamlessly adapted, playing as though he had grown up within the system. Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, dynamic and unpredictable, found spaces to flourish precisely because the structure around him was robust and stable. Every player understood their responsibilities and how their roles interconnected. Tactically, Enrique introduced nuanced elements such as the use of a false nine, intended not merely as a stylistic choice but as a strategic way to dominate midfield spaces. Pressing became disciplined rather than impulsive. Defensive solidity was built not from individual heroics, but collective responsibility. Attackers became the first defenders, midfielders became orchestrators of space, and defenders maintained composure rather than panicking under pressure. A clear demonstration of Enrique's psychological and tactical influence came in the Champions League semi-final against Arsenal. PSG had earlier lost to Arsenal in the group stage, a match that previously might have undermined their confidence. This time, however, PSG played with calm authority, overcoming Arsenal with deliberate control and calculated execution. That victory showed the extent of the team's evolution with Enrique in charge. When Mbappe departed, many expected an inevitable decline. Instead, PSG became even stronger as a unit. The attack diversified, goals were shared evenly, The loss of their star player paradoxically reinforced the collective identity Enrique had tirelessly cultivated. Rather than weakening the team, Mbappé's exit made them harder to predict and therefore harder to stop. The Champions League final against Inter Milan made everything Enrique had worked on visible. Paris Saint-Germain pressed high with discipline, forcing Inter into uncomfortable zones. Their shape in possession was stable, with the midfield three rotating fluidly to control space. Vitinha operated between the lines. Doué attacked the box with perfect timing, and the fullbacks offered width without leaving gaps behind. The ball moved with precision, the defensive line held its structure, and transitions were managed without panic. Every part of the game reflected training. The pressing patterns, the build-up rotations, the spacing between players, it was all there. This was a tactical masterpiece, a type of performance rarely seen in a Champions League final. And that, perhaps more than any trophy, would be Luis Enrique's lasting legacy. So, what do you think of Luis Enrique's impact at PSG? Let us know in the comments.